I think people look at partnerships sometimes as what can I get out of it and how do I maximize this for myself or for our business rather than looking at how can we collaborate and have the best outcome for the person that we're both or the business that we're both serving. And if you're looking at it wrong, you're looking at them as competitive and you're looking at them as just strictly revenue opportunities, I think you're just going to miss so many great opportunities that could work out and benefit everyone if you thought about it, just a little from a different mindset. So I think a lot of leaders they're just not thinking about the opportunities. They're thinking about the competition and they're thinking about trying to just squeeze what they can out of it.
All right, Matt Remuzzi, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. We are coming from opposite sides of the Pacific Ocean, and we have a bunch to talk about. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Before we get stuck into this conversation, and all the details of Matt and his history will be in the show notes, I'd like to read for our audience possibly the clearest value proposition I've ever heard of any company online. Let me just read this. CapForge, this is Matt's company, CapForge Bookkeeping offers full service professional small business and franchise bookkeeping. We help you become more profitable through knowing your numbers, understanding your financial statements, and top tier communication. No confusing jargon, no more confusing statements, just clarity and support to create more profitability in your business. I can only say I wish more companies told a story like that. And I'm sure you've told 1,000 different versions of that in your time. But Matt, I would love to dive into so many things about the sustainability of your business. You've been providing these services for a great amount of time. You've built an ecosystem of clients and influence, which I think is quite profound. And I have a hunch it's because there was such a clear value proposition there in the first place. But before we get to that, let's dive into Matt's backstory to understand how you got to here today.
Yeah, so I I always knew I wanted to have my own business. I just never knew what that would be. And I, was fearful of launching into something that wasn't going to work. And I, took a few half steps here and there, but I never really knew. And so I had worked in restaurants before college. I went to college, still didn't really have a plan. I studied psychology, which was interesting, but wasn't a career path. I went right back into restaurants. And finally, I kind of got fed up with myself and said, look, if I'm ever going to do this, I'm not getting any younger. Let's get going. So this was in my mid 20s. So I enrolled in a master's program, master's of business, because one of the local colleges in San Diego had an entrepreneurship track. And I thought, oh, this will be great. I'll be around other entrepreneurs. I'll finally figure out what I want to do. I did meet a ton of people. I did learn a lot, but at the end of it, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I took a job working as a consultant for small businesses, which was great because it kept me in the ecosystem I wanted to be in. I still was just working. Well, I got hired in May and then laid off in September. So that didn't last very long. But what I discovered was I probably could still do what I'd been doing as an employee as a freelancer. At least try it out. And if it didn't work, I figured I'd get a real job after that. 24 years later, I still haven't had to get a real job yet. It's worked out. But over the years, it's kind of morphed. I started as a consultant. I got into some software to help facilitate the consulting, and then software sales kind of became the main driver. But as I got a little nervous about having all my eggs in that basket, a catering business came up for sale. I bought the catering business and grew that, and then realized I really didn't enjoy the catering business at all. So I sold it. And then in the process of doing that, I thought, oh, maybe my path is I will buy a bunch of businesses and I'll just own this constellation of successful businesses as an investor more than as an owner operator. So I said, okay, I'll become a business broker. That way I'll be able to see all these deals. I'll cherry pick the best ones. I'll sell the rest. It'll be great. I ended up selling 36 businesses. I never found one that I wanted to buy. But what I kept noticing was all of these businesses were really struggling with bookkeeping. They either had their books were way behind, or they were not accurate, or what the bookkeeper wasn't really able to convey any useful information to the business owner. They got it done, and here's the reports, but they couldn't then help them use that in any meaningful way. So finally I thought, oh, maybe the opportunity here, instead of buying something, is to get into bookkeeping for small businesses and really help these owners understand, how to get good books, accurate, timely, and in a way that would be useful to them, that they could use to then help grow their business. So I started out of the spare bedroom doing that in 2012. And now here we are, just actually today is the 12-year anniversary of launching that. And, we have 85 employees and 1,200 clients. We got clients in all 50 states. We've got international clients. And I think the thesis of good bookkeeping at affordable rates, done in a way to really help business owners, not from an accounting standpoint, has really proven itself. I think my greatest strength is not being an accountant, right? I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. So when I talk to other business owners and entrepreneurs, I talk to them as a peer, not, sort of from the wings as an accountant speaking accounting, talking in jargon and not really understanding and not connecting. So I think that's what's given us the ability to get to here from where I started. And it's been a fun journey. And I never would have predicted, if you'd asked me 24 years ago, where are you going to be? I never would have said owning an accounting firm. That would have been like the last thing on my list. But, here we are. It's working great. And I couldn't be happier with the way things have gone.
That's amazing. And if you go right back into maybe your younger years, is there something that was the spark that gave you, I guess, the internal drive to want to move down that entrepreneurial piece? Because often it sort of lives inside us. It's not something that all of a sudden you arrive at and it's like, oh yeah, I could build stuff. Like it generally tends to be like an inherent sort of feeling of drive. Is that true for you, or is it something you discovered in time?
No, it absolutely was always something that was on my mind. I mean, I remember even as a kid, even in, middle school and high school, I was always kind of interested in how businesses worked. And, oh, that guy's got a t-shirt shop. I wonder how much he pays to buy the t-shirts. And then does he do the designs, and how many does he sell every month? And how much is the
Mhm.
rent for the shop? And how much it was always, it's just innate. I can't stop myself. I consider myself sort of the consummate business nerd. And I always joke that, when I'm in the ambulance on the way to my final resting place, right? It's my last 5 minutes on earth. I'll be thinking about, oh, I wonder how much ambulance companies do, how much do they do in revenue, and how do those margin? It's just in my head. I can't stop it. So I always knew that I would be somewhere on this path. I didn't know what it was. And that's why I got, sort of really down on myself when I was out of college. I was in my 20s and I still hadn't done it. And I just thought, I don't want to look back when I'm 75 and regret this. I
Mhm.
want to, as scary as it is and as uncertain as my path was at that point, I have to do it, or I won't be being true to who I feel like I am.
Isn't it interesting? I think we are kindred spirits in that respect. I feel as though, and I forgot the name of the film, but the one where the child said, "I see dead people."
Oh,
Um,
the sixth sense,
the
right?
Sixth Sense, right? Thank you. I feel as though I can't help but see business models. Like I see them everywhere. Like it's very difficult for me not to see those things, and I quite love it.
Yes.
I just have this curiosity I just can't shut down. It's fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is, it's in, it's internal. I think for me, it probably skipped a generation because my grandfather was very entrepreneurial, owned many
Mhm.
different businesses, was always kind of into the next thing. My father was an electrical engineer. He worked for two companies for his entire life, right? 25 years at one, 20 years at the other. And, his advice to me was always, well, get a good job. And then if you still want to do this business thing, do that on the weekends.
Yeah,
Sorry, Dad. I can't do it.
I know exactly how that feels. It's funny when I feel when I see entrepreneurs and business owners have a really solid grasp of their numbers. It is something which sets a lot of world-class operators apart, where they might not be the CFO and they might not be the accountant, but they certainly understand um, the inputs, outputs, and how to make sense of those and how to make judgments as a consequence of those. So, we've seen the evolution of smart software accountings. We know about MYOB, we know about Zero, we know about all these things that seem to plug and play, which is helpful for flows of data, but it still doesn't mean that you know what you're looking at, and it still requires that interpretation. So, as someone who works really closely with a whole range of different businesses and having that brokerage experience, as well as sort of helping to partner with a whole range of other companies to help them know their numbers, what are you seeing as the change that's happened maybe in the last decade or two around the approach to financial management in businesses? Because I guess the number of instruments that we can all get access to has really gone off the chart. It's now not just a bank loan and cash flow. There's a whole range of other ways that you can manage your business. How have you seen that change over the last sort of 20 years? And is it a good thing or a bad thing for business?
I think it's there's definitely a lot more data available, like you said, but I don't think what's missing is the interpretation level, right? So there's a lot more noise. 20, 30 years ago, you'd maybe get, your accountant would produce a certain number of reports for you. So it was
Mm,
a fairly manual process and you would get some information. And now, yes, you can use software, you can use apps, you can use data mining, you can use all kinds of things. And instead of 3 or 4 reports, you can get 3 or 400 reports.
yeah.
But the business owner is still sitting at the desk going, yeah, but what do I do next, right? What should I have 3 products I could launch. I can only afford to launch one of them. Which one should it be? Or, I want to hire 2 people and let one go. But how do I decide the timing of that? Or I have
Yeah.
inventory. Should I buy it this year or next year? Because I can get a discount if I pay ahead, but then cash will be tight. And the software doesn't, there's no way for it to answer any of those questions, right? It can just give you a bunch of data and it's more granular and maybe a little more timely than it used to be. But it doesn't, there's still this huge chasm between the business owner's understanding of what to do with the information and the information itself. And that hasn't been bridged. And I don't think, we're still a long way off from where, there's going to be the chat GPT of accounting that's going to be able to confidently answer those questions for business owners, with any degree of reliability. So what we've always tried to do is take the data that we produce from an accounting standpoint and then help business owners make sense of it, make those decisions, or at least understand the pros and cons of the options better so they can be more informed in their decision making. And I don't think that has changed nearly as much. The buzz is around the AI and the software capabilities for doing a lot of manual tasks automatically, but there was always a disconnect between accountants and business owners in not being very good at being able to help them explain how to make good decisions.
Mm.
And that's the bridge that we've built. And I guess I'm not worried about there being a million other bridge builders because I don't think it's an easily replaced or replicated service.
It's interesting. We have if we were in the US, I think we would be using you and your team. We have a similar person here who does a very similar role. And you're right. I just don't think there's the bridge building that's going on. I think there's people who do this well, and they're in very short supply.
Mhm.
Because the insight that it provides and the relief I think it provides to business owners to actually have that kind of guiding light and voice around, well, this is kind of what it means. You've got choices. Here's what they are. I think is hugely underdone. And if anyone is listening to this who is thinking about going into financial management, please heed these words, because the ability to translate all of this information into useful insight is where the game's being played. Super, super important. Matt, when we think about where small businesses are going right now, we've just come into a high interest rate environment. Inflation, at least in our country, still is quite high. I know in the US it's higher than it has been in some time. There's a lot of challenges for the really small businesses out there. What are you seeing, and how are you advising all of these companies that you are partnering with to try and navigate that for now? Is it as simple as, cash is king, try and do everything you can to get back to your fundamentals, or is there something else that you're trying to help them work with?
I think it's easy to get wrapped up in sort of the current news, the macroeconomic environment, and try to um, operate in a way that reacts to whatever's going on. But I think it's easy then to forget that the fundamentals are still really what's key. I always tell our clients, the very best marketing that you could ever do is free, and it's called just doing an amazing job, right? If you do an amazing job for each customer that you work with, each client, they are going to not only stick with you, but they're going to refer other people to you. They're going to write you good reviews. They're going to come back to you when they need your services again. And there's no marketing, you can run all the Google ads you want, right? But people say, I don't know that name, or I don't trust their reviews, or I don't. But if somebody tells you, hey, I worked with those guys, they did a great job. There is no better way to get not even warm, right? A piping hot lead than somebody referring you because they had a great experience with you.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people get wrapped up in, oh, I'm going to do Facebook ads and I'm going to do retargeting and I've got this branding and I'm going to get a great website and I'm going to do these amazing logos. And yeah, but are you doing a great job, right? Make sure that that's happening first. When a customer calls, somebody answers the phone and can, give an intelligent response. When somebody emails you, you get back to them quickly. When somebody asks for a quote, you give them a quote. And then if you tell somebody the project will be 2 weeks, you deliver it in 2 weeks or 10 days or 9 days, instead of a month and a half later, they're still chasing you to do whatever it is that you promised you would do. Those are the fundamental things that I think a lot of business owners either never got right or overlook. They used to get them right when they were smaller, but as they scaled up, they kind of lost focus on doing some of those fundamental things. So I think the first step any business owner should be doing is just evaluating, are we doing fundamentally a good job for each of the customers that we interact with, whoever they may be, whatever they may be looking for, whatever business line we're in. Are they coming away satisfied, happy, and willing to refer us to other people? Or are they just sort of, well, it got done, but I wasn't happy with it? Or are they actively unhappy, right? They're writing
Yeah.
bad reviews. How much do you have to spend in advertising and marketing and sales efforts to overcome a whole bunch of bad reviews, right? A ton, because people are going to be turned away before you even get to talk to them. So just doing a good job, just business 101. And then the other thing I always tell them is, make sure that there's some reason for somebody to pick you over your competition, right? Virtually no business operates in a vacuum with no competition. There's always choices. There's certainly other accounting firms people could go to. There's other, all kinds of options for almost anything you can think of. So what's the reason they should pick you? What do you do different and better than the other choices? And are you communicating that well, right? You should have an advantage. If you can't think of a single reason somebody would pick you over the other choices, then you've got some work to do, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty, again, business 101. You have a unique selling proposition, have something you do better than everyone else, and then let people know about it. If you don't have something, or you're not, getting that message out there, then you're not, you're not performing at your best just right there without doing anything else.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I often feel as though it's not about doing things that don't scale. I think it's about doing uncommon things well. And when it comes to whatever is uncommon for your business or your industry, it can be as simple as you said it would take 2 weeks, do it in 10. Like there are some really basic things that I think there's a level of mistrust and cynicism generally in business that the bar to surprise and delight has been lowered.
Yes.
And I just don't think enough people are going, all right, so what is our surprise and delight bar that would lead, as you say, directly to a referral and to somebody who is just so excited to talk about you that marketing just became a very different kind of game.
Exactly. I mean, if you think of each customer not as their individual, the individual opportunity, but if each customer was worth 2 referrals to new customers, right? You'd never have to spend a dime on marketing because the business just organically is going to keep doubling and doubling and doubling. If you're continuing to do that, provide that level of service and interaction, and having those customers be that happy that they're willing to talk about their experience in a positive way without you prompting them or offering them a reward or anything else. They're just that happy with what you've done for them that they're willing to share that information with other people. I mean, that if you worked on that and did nothing else, you'd have a great business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Tell me, if we pivot to partnerships, we talk about this idea of how we form a really trusted relationship with people over time, and this can happen in a couple of directions. So just to set the groundwork for these next couple of questions, when we think about partnerships, we are talking about how do we distribute and sell more through people and organizations that maybe have the ear of the customers that we're trying to get to, And similarly, how do we turn our suppliers into genuine partners so that we can innovate with them in a way which ordinarily wouldn't happen because we're too busy ordinarily trying to work out, how do we get the cheapest thing at the right volume we need, and try and just change that narrative really substantially. When you think about partnership, what is that one thing that comes into your mind that is really important to you? Because partnership can be a pretty romantic term, and it can often sort of fall flat because people will say, partnerships fail. Well, actually, the good ones have been persevering for decades. We've just decided not to sort of look out for them. How do you frame up that idea of partnership in your kind of business and your history?
So for me, the most important thing in any partnership is that there is um, a two-way benefit, right? So if I'm getting a bunch of referrals from you and I give you nothing back, then I don't have any expectation that relationship's going to last. You have no benefit from that. And likewise, if somebody comes to me and wants to, me to send them a bunch of our customers, and I don't see benefit to our customers or us, then I don't see much incentive, right? The best partnerships we have are the ones where we are mutually benefiting each other. There's no referral fee or we don't even need a contract. It's just,
Mm.
a great fit both ways. So I'll give you an example. Given my past experience working as a business broker, I realized I wasn't the only broker running into a lot of clients who were having, less than ideal bookkeeping. If a company doesn't have good books, it's much harder to sell it if you can sell it at all.
Yeah.
So we work with a lot of business brokers in a very complimentary way. They will refer somebody to us who is interested in selling their business, but their books are a mess. We'll take them, clean up their books, get everything in great shape, and then hand them back to the broker who can then get them a premium price and a successful sale, right? So they couldn't do what they need to do without us. And we can't help, the client if they're not coming. We're working together on this, right? We
Mm.
both get a successful outcome for the same client. The client is happy with us because we took them from unsellable to sellable. And the business broker is happy because they have a client who went from unsellable to sellable. So, everybody works together. I don't need to pay them a fee to send me somebody. They don't expect me to pay them for referrals because we're mutually, it's a win-win-win for the three groups involved in that way. And that makes a great partnership. And we've had brokers we've been working with for a decade or more because of that exact reason. So
Mm.
that's a great partnership. And we will collaboratively talk about how we can work with this client together. What are you doing for them? What are you telling them? What am I telling them? Let's make sure, we're all optimized for the same thing. And of course, the client gets the best from both of us because we're working together to succeed. To me, that's an obvious and really, a great partnership. And anything where it's lopsided or uneven, is immediately much harder to maintain or even make workable at all. So to me, a great partnership, or the criteria, is that both sides have to equally benefit from it. Otherwise, it's not going to work long term, in my opinion.
How do you go about building trust in the early days for a partnership like that?
So anytime we start a new partnership, we always start slow with, just one referral or one client or what have you. And we have to see that they're going to treat people the same way we expect to, that we treat them, and that person's going to get that same experience. So if we reply to emails the same day, we meet our promises for deadlines, we set fixed flat rate quotes ahead of time before they even start working with us. So there's complete transparency. We expect our partners to operate essentially the same way, right? We
Mm.
want them to be responsive. We want them to be transparent. We want them to meet deadlines and expectations. So the client would be happy to refer either of us to anyone they knew, right? So if the person we're working with as a potential partner fails to do that, fails to meet expectations, makes promises they don't keep, doesn't communicate well, isn't transparent with how they're doing things, then immediately our values are misaligned, right? We
Mm.
we want somebody who shares our values, who could, the best way I could think of it is they could literally be part of our company and there wouldn't be any difference, right? We wouldn't have to teach them anything new because they already operate exactly the way we operate, right? So that makes a great partner. And somebody who isn't following those same values and aligned in the same way is not going to be a good partner for us. So we have to build trust by seeing that not only do they say what they're going to do, but they do what they say, right? The actions speak louder than words, and their actions have to match with what we expect from them and what we expect from ourselves.
I think there's a great standard you've just described here around there is, they may as well be part of our business. That is probably the litmus test for me. If you can walk between two very different buildings and you feel as though there's still that translation between the cultures of those two organizations, even if it lives with only a few people, I think that is such an important test for people to look at as they're trying to work out, is this a true partnership or not? Look for that translation. I think it's super valuable, and it is replicable too. I think, and we argue that you can do this with many different partners at a time, because once you get this right, it's not as though you need to do a heavy lift every time. Once you build that formula, it seems to work out pretty well. Matt, was there a particular partnership that opened your eyes to the power and the potential for doing really substantial partnerships, maybe earlier in the piece, where you did what you said, you started with one referral and then it really started to grow, and that really for the first time made you think, actually, no, wait a second, this is how we can do business? Was there one of those that you could talk to?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been, even in earlier ventures than what I'm doing now. Partners were always a key piece of my plan, because again, if you get somebody as a referral from a partner, it's going to be a much more likely. They know who you're looking for and who's a good fit for you, so you're automatically going to be talking to people who are going to be likely a good customer for you. And then because of the referral and the relationship, it's generally much easier to bring them on board and have a successful interaction. So even from my earlier days, I mean, even from the catering business, for example, we partnered with a bunch of different providers of different things. For example, with we had the food part. We partnered with venues who didn't provide food, but knew that we would do a great job. We would show up on time. People would like the food. They were happy with it. And we would, when people came to us first and were looking for a venue or hadn't settled on one yet, we could recommend venues that we knew, people had a really good experience at and didn't get hit with a bunch of unexpected charges or
Mm.
scheduling conflicts or all kinds of other things. So I've always been a big believer in partnerships. And in the early days of the accounting, we partnered with some firms that worked on sort of business coaching, right? They would try to help business owners improve their businesses, but they had a hard time because if the business owner didn't have good metrics, good financials, it was hard for them to see if the improvements they were suggesting were having the impact
Right.
that they were hoping for. So we would partner with firms like that, and they would send us a lot of people, because a lot of people, again, struggled with this, didn't have good books. By us cleaning up the books and working with them, then now the coach could be much more successful because they could see the direct impact of the suggestions they were making, and the owner could see that implementing those suggestions was having the desired impact. And it was great for us because we were working with clients who appreciated the work we did and we're getting good value out of the numbers, instead of just saying, well, I just need to hire this because I eventually have to pay taxes, so I'll need it, but really not seeing any value in the work we were doing. So again, it was a great complementary relationship for us to be able to help those same clients that were working with the coaches. And everybody was getting better results as a result of the collaboration.
I love that way that ecosystem play can play out for people, because I think it's, once you tap into it, it becomes super powerful. What
Yes.
are your clients? So the businesses that you're supporting, um, what are they often getting wrong about the way they frame partnerships for their work?
I think a lot of times people think of partnerships from this perspective of what can I get out of it, right? And they're looking for, okay, if I partner with that guy and he sends me 10 leads a month and I can close four of them, it would be worth this much to me in sales. So I'm going to try and talk that guy into sending me leads because that will
Yeah,
help me. But they're missing the reciprocal part of it, right? And if it's just pay, okay, I'll pay you so much for sending me your clients. If that person agrees to that, they may then switch to somebody who offers them more, or they might find that if you're not a good fit and you're not delivering value, then the people they've sent over are coming back to them unhappy and dissatisfied, and that causes problems. So to me, doing a partnership based on just a financial what can I get out of it, or paying for things, is much less powerful and much less likely to succeed than something that's built on a complementary result where everybody gets something out of it. Everybody has something to contribute, and everybody gets something positive out of it. And it's, a 1+1 = 3 kind of situation,
Mm.
rather than trying to just say, what can I get out of it? And I think that's not just in partnerships and not just in business, but in life in general, right? If you look first, how can I add value? And then it will come back to me probably eventually, rather than going into it and saying, what value can I extract, right, to benefit me? I think you're much less likely to have good outcomes with the me first philosophy versus the give first philosophy.
I remember having a number of partnerships in the early days, and this is in science and biotechnology and healthcare, where the most memorable ones and the ones, ironically, that end up being most successful started with a very generous offer from the other partner. So many of my businesses were quite small. We were playing in a large pond, and we were trying to fight above our fighting weight because we didn't have the marketing budgets and we didn't know how to go about doing this. So partnership seemed like the logical way to try and build out relationships. And I'll never forget two guys in particular who said, well, look, tell me what you need. They taught me that a clear ask is the first step in actually making anything work. And if they can understand that clear ask, then they can work and see if they can meet it. And if they can't, fine. But if they can, they usually will. And it will be something that is a little bit above and beyond what you asked for in the first place, just to get the relationship off to the right start. And this idea of generosity in that first sort of interaction is, again, one of those uncommon things. Um, so many people will often think about the zero sum game of this, right? Where it's just,
Mhm.
how do I get the most out of this situation? So I think you're thinking about it all wrong. If you can put your first foot forward, even if it's a completely new relationship with a generous starting point, it changes the game entirely for how people go into, well, how do I negotiate this? What are all the tactical things I can do? It becomes a very different circumstance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, again, I'm sure there's, again, I'm not remembering the name, but there, there's quotes around that same idea, right? Give first. In order to get, give first. And I think being more generous and figuring out how you can add more value does come back to you and does make the whole thing much more likely to work than trying to be, what's the least I can give? What's the least I can put into this to get the most for myself? That sort of mentality tends to shortchange things and cause them to not work out, to fall apart. And so I think there is sort of that, the mindset that you go into it with is really key to having a successful relationship. Again, in business and in life in general, I think those are good things to think about and live by.
Yeah, I agree. Now, what excites you about the future of your industry and the way that the world is playing out at the moment?
I think that the best thing that's happening for us is, like we were mentioning earlier, there is a lot of software and a lot of tools that are taking a lot of the manual work out of
Mm.
the equation. And, some people are scared of that because that's the part they know how to do and that's the part they're charging for. And if that goes away, what are they going to do? But to me, that's great because it clears off the drudgery part and the manual part and the part that just sucks up time and I have to charge you for, but doesn't add a lot of value, and lets us spend more time talking about those decision points and the pros and cons and the ways that you can move forward, and the real value add that humans and knowledgeable people can add value in, that just the drudgery and the manual stuff really doesn't you need it, but you don't get much out of it.
Yeah.
So to me, what's exciting about the future is being able to invest more time and really build clients for the value that we can add, rather than just the mechanical operation of adding up sums and putting together reports. So I think for us, that is a great opportunity. There might be other firms out there that see it as a big threat, and that's fine. They'll fold up and we'll help out their clients too. But that, I think, is what's exciting to me about the future.
I think it's fantastic. Anyone who's listening to this, the idea of translation and that role of trying to make sense of things, I think is going to be very difficult for AI to create any kind of competitive difference in that. I think there's going to be a long time where we're going to rely on the human instinct and the way of that translation actually working. I think you're really well positioned for that into the future, particularly for small businesses that will spend a lot of time trying to come up the curve of understanding what all these tools are. I think that fear is going to sadly hold a lot of people back, where
Right.
in fact it could actually, like you say, remove a lot of drudgery. We operate essentially a 4-person organization here, but we probably process more information and throughput, that an organization of 10 or 15 would do. And it's because we just learned how those tools can benefit us. I think there's a lot to be said there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's an opportunity. It's just, again, it's how you frame it and look at it. And, if you're willing to kind of explore new ways of doing things, then there's always new opportunities. And you and I guess, are genetically predisposed to spot the opportunities, right? Other people, I think, are, well, I went to school for this. I learned how to do this. That's all I know. And, for them, maybe it is more of a situation of being sort of fearful of what the future holds, because if they take this away, I don't know what else I'm going to do. But it's certainly not the way that I view it. I view it as, great. Let's see what's next and let's make something great out of it.
We have a tradition on this show that we ask 5 questions in a rapid fire. I'd love to get to those. I always find the answers pretty fascinating from person to person. But before we get to that, I have a question around what leaders may or may not be seeing when it comes to partnership. So there will be a number of leaders, and they can be in small businesses, they can be in large companies, even in not-for-profits and in government. And the idea of partnership is intoxicating. We can see the efficiency of effort, the sum of the parts argument, yet many leaders won't go down that track. So my question to you is, what are leaders missing?
I think there's two things. I think they see competition a lot of times where they should be seeing opportunity. We even partner with people in our field, other accounting firms, because there are things we do better than they do and things that we don't do that they do. And so even in our own field, rather than seeing people first as competition, I like to see, think of it more as, what are the opportunities? Are there ways we could help each other and work together? We're both in the same field. We both understand the challenges our clients are facing, and there might be different ways we can both help them out and work together instead of just seeing everybody else as competition. So I think just that mind frame of, I want to acquire all the customers, and I, want to fight off anyone else who may have an interest in the same customers. I think, a lot of times they're overlooking potential where there could be collaboration, and there's plenty of customers and clients out there for the firms who are really doing a great job. The firms who aren't doing a great job, they're the ones who are likely to lose clients. But again, that's preventable, right? They could do a better job if they were worried about it. And I think the other thing, again, is like we were saying, I think people look at partnerships sometimes as, what can I get out of it? And how do I maximize this for myself or for our business, rather than looking at how can we collaborate and have the best outcome for the person that we're both, or the business that we're both serving. And if you're looking at it wrong, you're looking at them as competitive and you're looking at them as just strictly revenue opportunities, I think you're just going to miss so many great opportunities that could work out and benefit everyone if you thought about it, just a little from a different mindset. So I think a lot of leaders they're just not thinking about the opportunities. They're thinking about the competition, and they're thinking about trying to just squeeze what they can out of it.
Just yesterday, in an episode which is yet to be published with the CEO of Crossbeam, Bob Moore, he mentioned exactly what you just said. He had spent a decade of his life in a previous chapter building a company, and essentially competing against one other monolith in the room. And ultimately, towards the end of that 10-year journey, they ended up meeting and having a conversation. And much to his surprise, and I think a little bit dismay, he realized that actually they were both trying to solve the same problem. They actually had the same underlying value set. It's just that there was a default setting of, you are the competition, therefore we will fight. We'll go into combat. And he said, I really wish I had have met them sooner, just to understand what they could have been. It might not have resulted in a merger or into a larger company, but it certainly would have changed the trajectory of investment and behavior and exhaustion trying to go into
Right.
fight up against this other thing. So
Right.
that is incredibly sage advice. If you think that you have competitors, maybe the question to ask is, are they actually collaborators in disguise? Maybe go and have a conversation with them and see what happens. That won't always be the case. Like the answer won't always be they're actually great people
Right.
to deal with, but why not even open that conversation? I think it's an important one. All right, Matt, let's do this rapid fire. Very interested to see your responses to this. Um, before we do, where can people learn more about you and your business? You're in California. Do you help people who are outside of the state? How would people work with you if they've just discovered you and the team and what you do?
Yeah. So the best place to find out more about us is our website, capforge.com. It's got, information about myself and the team and the services we provide and our pricing. We definitely work with people outside of California. We work with people all across the country. And in fact, we have a lot of international business owners who have some business connection to, they own an entity in the United States or do business in some fashion here. And we work with a lot of folks like that as well. Really, the best place to start if you're interested in finding out more is, I love to have a conversation with anyone. What do you have going on? What are your challenges? What are your pain points? And are there ways that we might be able to help and work together? And if the answer is yes, great, we can continue to explore it. And if the answer is no, well, a lot of times I still meet a really interesting person with a brand new business that I, learn more about. And I enjoy the conversation either way. So, reaching out and getting in touch, having a conversation is always the best place to start. And I'll be the first person to tell you, if, hey, I don't think we are the best fit, but let me introduce you to someone else who can do more of what you're looking for, specializes in that where we don't, or whatever. You never want to just take on customers just because they're willing to pay you if you can't have that, exceptional outcome and really, meet their needs. I think a lot of people say yes when they shouldn't say yes, and that just leads to disappointment, and frustration. But if we can help you, great. We're always looking to bring on more clients and serve more people.
Amazing. All right, here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
Rapid fire. Here we go. Complete this sentence. Partnership is.
The best form of marketing.
What content are you loving at the moment?
I've been watching a lot of Alex Hormozy videos. He owns acquisition.com. He's you know, just a traditional kind of entrepreneur, start, fail, start, fail, start, and then finally figure it out and scale like crazy. He's got a ton of great advice in his videos, and there's no pitch, there's no, course to sign up for or anything. It's just tons of good content. I really have been liking him lately.
I'm with you. He has a recent piece of content out where he describes what branding actually is. And I've been in business for a long time, but when I heard him describe what branding is, and I'm just going to leave it at that, people can go and search for that video. It was one of those things that just made me realize that I might have been doing this all wrong. So
Yes.
by all means, get after Alex Hormozy. He's got some great stuff. All right. What's the worst piece of advice you've received and why?
So I've heard from multiple people, it takes money to make money. What that means is it's usually someone who's pitching you something you don't really need, right? A course or consulting or whatever it is. And they're basically telling you, well, if you're not, brave enough or smart enough to spend a lot of money with me, then of course you're, doomed to be small or unsuccessful or whatever. But it does, you can make smart investments and you can spend money and make more. But I think sometimes that mantra gets people confused and they throw a lot of good money into things that they don't need or weren't going to be successful, or they didn't really vet and test and do a small test before sinking, a ton of money into it. And I find a lot of times when I hear people saying that, even in reference to their own business, they're just digging themselves a big hole. So you can solve problems with money, but a lot of times that should be kind of the last resort, right? Thinking through how to do things better. Like I was mentioning earlier, right? If you just make sure that your business is delivering amazing service, then you don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on Google ads and Facebook ads to try to bring in new leads, right? If you're disappointing the customers that you already have, right? So yes, it does sometimes take money to make money, but don't let that cloud your judgment on what you're spending your money on.
I don't know what to say to that except to say amazing advice. But hold on to that advice, listeners. It's a super important piece. When you see potential for a new partnership, what's the first thing you do to turn that potential into action?
I like to have a conversation. You can sort of sit back and do all the back of the napkin calculations you want and think, oh, these guys might be great, and I can see how there could be a terrific partnership here. But are they interested? Are they open to it? And do they, like we were talking about, do they share the same values? Because everything else might be a great fit, but they may just not be the kind of company that we particularly want to work with, right? They might just have that kind of slick, high pressure sales pitch. That's kind of the exact opposite of how we talk to clients, right? We always say, here's the solution that we can offer you. If that makes sense, great. If not, no problem, right? And that's how we kind of like to work with other companies that have the same type of pitch. If their pitch is, look, you got to sign by today at 5 p.m. or else the price is going to go up, or I might have to pull the offer altogether and you're going to miss out. Are you sure sign? That's just not a good vibe. Those are not a good fit for us. So I like to start with a conversation and just find out more about them, who they are, what they're about. And then we can talk about, is there a way that might make sense to work together, and what would a test of that process look like? But, I think you waste a lot of time imagining how things could work, and then finding out once you finally talk that, oh, this isn't going to be a fit at all. Just start with the conversation, reach out, say, hey, I think we might be able to help each other out. Can we set up a time to talk? Let's see how it goes.
Love it. All right. Final question. What's one thing that you're deeply grateful for right now?
I guess I'm deeply grateful for the fact that, I finally screwed up the courage and got started 24 years ago, because I would hate to think the amount of regret and disappointment in myself that would have built up if I just kind of taken job after job and always wished that I'd done something that I wanted to do and never, taken that leap of faith to just give it a try. So I'm grateful that I finally overcame my fear and gave it a chance. It changed the course of my life. It got me to where I am today. Of course, I'm deeply grateful for my wife and my family and the kids and the life that I've built. But I think a lot of that stems from, finally taking that step and going out and starting on the entrepreneurial journey. If I hadn't done that, who knows, I might not be married, have any kids. I'd be still living in a bachelor apartment and just, drinking the weekends away with regret. So that was a life-changing decision that seemed like, a small step at the time, but, small step, or what is that, 10,000 mile journey starts with the first step kind of thing. That is literally the truth.
Amazing. Matt, I've such enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for making the time. CapForge.com is where we're going to send people. And Matt, I think you are one of the few people who has been able to look at a very important niche and capitalize. It is obviously built on such trusted partnerships that you've built over time. And I just want to say thank you for doing that, because it's such a great example of how business can be done. So thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me. I have enjoyed the conversation a ton. It's always nice to meet another, fellow business nerd that we can share that sort of love of analysis and business opportunity spotting. People go train spotting, right? Hang out at airports and watch planes. I love spotting business opportunities, and it sounds like you do as well. So,
Yeah.
we got to start our own little club. But yeah, it was great to meet you. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hey, it's Phil, and thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode of Partnership Plus. If you're one of the 61% of people who have discovered this episode and you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that. The bigger the channel, the bigger the guests. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.